go do it. Like whatever you want to do, just have that idea that this is something that I would like to do, set out on it, make connections on LinkedIn, reach out to people with a personal message that this is something that I'm interested to learn about.
You're welcome to the Biopatrika PhD talk show. My name is Patience Asanga, and I'll be your host on today's episode. Today we have on the show Dr. Debakshi Mullick, a senior scientist at GSK. You're welcome, Dr. Mullick.
Thank you, Patience. Thank you very much for having me here and giving me this opportunity.
You're welcome. So you completed your BSc at Aloysius College, and then you went on to get your PhD from the Weizmann Institute of Science, and now you're at GSK. So could you please walk us through your journey from your undergraduate days down to your current role at GSK, telling us how your graduate school application was like and how and why you transitioned to the industry?
Sure. So, as you said, I did my Bachelor in Science from St. Aloysius College in Mangalore. And then I moved on to Vellore at the VIT, which is Vellore Institute of Technology, to do my Master of Science in Biotechnology. Then, after a short stint in the industry at Biocon Pharmaceuticals in Bangalore, I decided that I would like to pursue a PhD, which in a more clinically relevant field. And what interested me most at that time was malaria biology. So at NCBS Bangalore, I was studying malaria biology at that point and gaining some experience with research there. And while this was happening, the field of cryo-electron microscopy was blooming at that time. And I decided that I would like to combine two of my interests, malaria and cryo-electron microscopy. And I set out to find PhD positions that were relevant to these two topics. So the way I designed my application was to first screen for the things that combine my interests. So there were a few positions open at that time, and one of them was at the Weizmann Institute of Science. So the first step that I did there was to contact the professor, which was Dr. Michael Elbaum, and I asked him that how exactly does he envisage his student to combine these two things, malaria and cryo-EM. And so he wrote back to me saying how he would like to see the project progress. I like the sound of it. And then I applied through the PhD program at the Weizmann Institute for this. And I stated Dr. Michael Elbaum as a potential guide for this project. And that's how I ended up after a round of interviews and then them going through my qualifications, etc. I ended up there. I did not particularly have to clear any exam for this one because at that time the Weizmann did not require GRE or anything like that. I'm not sure if that has changed now, but at that point of time I did not require it. So yeah, and to answer your question specifically, I was pretty direct as to what I would like to see my PhD to look like, and my professor also was very frank with me as to how he would see the project progress, and we basically chalked it all out together.
Okay, so after your PhD, did you want to continue in academia or you always wanted to go to the industry?
So I always liked industrial research because of the fast pace and the outcomes that it produces. You know, we all have great life-saving drugs, and biopharmaceuticals right now are in boom again. And so I always liked this kind of research, which is why I was an intern before. And then when I did my PhD, I thought about it quite hard. And I did take up a postdoc with the Diamond Light Source and the University of Oxford in the UK. And when this opportunity opened up at GSK, that's how I landed myself here. So, yes, I was always interested in joining the industry.
Okay, you are a structural biologist, right?
Yes, I am a structural biologist. At least that's my title.
Okay, so what does structural biologists do at GSK?
So, a structural biology is pretty much looks at the structure in the context of biology, mainly biology of a disease. So, what a typical structural biologist would do, they would have a protein or a ligand of interest. A ligand can be literally anything. It can be a small molecule, it can be a large, another protein molecule like an antibody or anything for that matter, and they would look at interactions, how the ligand of interest would interact with the protein of interest. And the protein can be as well a driver or a marker of some clinically relevant pathway of some kind.
What skills do you need to become a structural biologist?
So, okay, the more skills you have, the better. I mean, definitely a general skill set of communication, because it'll involve a lot of talking to different kinds of people across different fields of sciences and departments. So definitely that. But scientific core skills that one would require is quite a bit of good idea about protein biology, like what do proteins constitute, and how interactions would affect them, how interactions would change, what kind of buffers they should be. So yeah, a lot of protein biochemistry would be nice. So anybody aspiring to be a structural biologist should not skip that chapter on protein biochemistry.
Okay, now you've talked about young scientists. What advice would you give to upcoming scientists that want to become structural biologists?
So, yeah, like if you want to become a structural biologist, sometimes just concentrating on what you are doing at the moment is great, because the thing is that a structural biologist would need to have quite a bit of knowledge about other things that are going on besides protein biochemistry, because everything feeds in to one another. The reason why I'm saying that is you might be interested in the protein biochemistry part of it, but you don't know, if you don't know how cells are behaving and how they are folding those proteins within it, etc., then you might be at a slight disadvantage in understanding your system. So definitely have that core knowledge of biochemistry, protein biochemistry, oligonucleotides, then other nucleotides, etc. But yeah, keep your mind open, and because everywhere you can always fit in the knowledge and the skills that you have to what you are doing at the moment.
Okay, let's circle back to GSK. What would
Okay.
somebody do to get an internship at GSK? What would a young scientist do? Say in say the person is an
Mhm.
undergraduate or a master's
Okay.
student. What would the person do to get an internship in GSK?
So not only at GSK, this answer would apply to anywhere else that's looking for an internship. Look very hard at the websites, because the websites generally have everything. So they have GSK at least has a very good dedicated website where you can screen for internships, jobs, etc. And if you read through it, then you will see the keywords that might be suggested to use for looking for an internship. So that would be the best way, I believe, to get an internship. And GSK does have a few things that I saw. They might not be called an internship, so look out again for the description of what those things are called. So, for example, they often can call it an apprenticeship or an industrial placement. This is very specific to the UK, I must say, because over here in the UK, the undergraduate degrees in some of the universities comes with an 1 year of industrial experience that lets you work in the industry for a year, and that sort of counts towards your degree. So for any other person looking for an internship, do go through the specific websites of the places that one would like to apply. It really helps.
All right. A lot of persons are talking about work-life balance now, and their
Yeah,
jobs are taking a lot of their time, while some are trying to find a balance between their work life and their life generally. So, how do
yeah.
you manage your time? Do you have a lot of free time in your hand, and what do you do with this free time?
So I mean, to quote everyone who talks about this thing, you're not always working at the job alone. You also have to make that job work for you, right? So what it basically means is that when you have a certain job, like our job is science still, and so a lot of the time goes in optimizing experiments, then looking after things that may be a little beyond your work hours or whatever. So a little bit of flexibility from the side of your organization really helps, but it also helps you to have like a timetable of things that you want to do. For example, I like to swim in the evening, and I do take out the time to swim. I might be actually planning an experiment during the swim because, your mind is occupied doing the laps and you are like, thinking about things that didn't work or things that could work better, etc. So definitely that. Then I love to cook myself a meal every day for the next day's lunch. So I take time for that. So yeah, and on the weekends I go bird watching or for a hike or something like that. And so pretty much I would say I have been able to, and the only reason that I have been able to do that is because I make a conscious effort to fit all of these things into my life. So yeah, work-life balance is definitely very, very important. And if you are also excited about your work, it becomes a tad bit easier to do that.
Thank you for telling us about that. Seem to have a lot of fun in your life.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
For our last interaction, I would think I want to know, do you get to do a lot of science? Because you talked about experiment and the rest. There's this it's not really a general idea, but there's this school of thought that you don't get to do a lot of
Hmm.
science in the industry. It's only in academia that you do all the research and the rest, and it's mostly administrative when you get to the industry. So, what do you have to say about this?
I would firstly say excellent question. I always thought about all of these things as well, but my internship in the industry way back in 2012 sort of changed it. I saw a lot of science being done, and even at GSK, I do a lot of science. Most of my time goes in science because you're again optimizing for drugs. The only thing that is different is that there is a timeline. Okay, there's a deadline, there's a timeline that you have to meet because there are a lot of teams that are working on it, not just the scientific team, right? There are clinical trial teams, then there are marketing teams. And so, given that it's a company, it's all very tight, but at the same time you as a scientist in the company would be doing a lot of science. So a lot of failed experiments, a lot of optimizing those failed experiments to work for you. And yeah, and a lot of reading, definitely lots of reading. Half of my time goes in understanding what other people have done all over the world in academia for a system like what I'm working on, similar systems, and getting ideas from that. So your life doesn't really change much. It just becomes of a faster pace. You're no longer married to the one question. You have many questions and many goals now that one would need to meet. So, yeah, so that's something that is different. And also noting down a lot of new things that you may not be used to doing, but every single little thing needs to be noted down so that there one can go back and see why an experiment worked or why it failed. So this is, of course, very similar, right, to academia. It's not very different, just that the pace is much more.
Okay, so what are your final thoughts to aspiring young scientists?
I would definitely say just go do it. Like whatever you want to do, just have that idea that this is something that I would like to do, set out on it, make connections on LinkedIn, reach out to people with a personal message that this is something that I'm interested to learn about, or I have been following you on LinkedIn and have been seeing the kind of work that you have done. So I am interested to know more, or anything like that, because now we have this great tool, right, of social media, and it would be nice to put it to good use for ourselves. So yeah, like if you're aspiring to do something, just go for it. Like all hands down, go for it. Don't leave one stone unturned.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for coming on the show. We really enjoyed listening to your experiences and your um, and your talk. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.